The Galactic Science Commission studies how humans invented everything from boredom. Part 1. Commissioner Hal stared at the data streams flowing across her workstation and felt something she rarely experienced: complete confusion. She had spent 200 years studying the technological development of 43 different species across the galaxy. She understood the patterns. She could predict the curves, but the humans made no sense at all. "Run the analysis again," she told her assistant, a young named Finn who had just graduated from the Commission's academy. Finn's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of nervousness. "Commissioner, I've run it 17 times. The data doesn't change." "Then the data must be wrong." "With respect, Commissioner, the humans provided these records themselves. They seem quite proud of them." Hal leaned back in her chair, which adjusted automatically to support her crystalline spine structure. She pulled up the human timeline again, letting it hover in the air between them. Every species had a timeline like this. It showed when they invented fire, when they discovered agriculture, when they reached space. The pattern was always the same: crisis, response, innovation. Crisis, response, innovation. Need drove progress. That was the fundamental law of technological development. Except humans, apparently, had never heard of that law. "Explain this one to me again," Hal said, pointing to an entry dated Earth year 1903. "The Wright brothers." Finn pulled up the detailed files. 2 humans, they owned a bicycle shop. Their planet had perfectly functional transportation. They had trains, ships, and those early automobiles. They didn't need to fly. So why did they invent the airplane? According to their own journals, they watched birds and thought it looked fun. Hal felt her chromatophores shift color involuntarily, a sign of deep distress among her people. Fun. They revolutionized transportation because it looked fun. That's what the records indicate. Finn scrolled through more entries. "It gets stranger, Commissioner. Look at this human named Tim Lee. He invented what they call the World Wide Web. Do you know why?" "I'm almost afraid to ask." He was frustrated that he couldn't easily share research papers with his colleagues. So, in his spare time, he created a system that connected every computer on their planet. He didn't ask for funding. He didn't form a committee. He just did it because the problem annoyed him. Hal stood and walked to the window of her office, which looked out over the Commission's vast research complex on the neutral moon of Prime. In the distance, she could see the archives where they stored the developmental records of every known species. Somewhere in those archives was the story of her own people. They had invented space travel because their star was expanding, and they needed to find new worlds. They had developed advanced medicine because a plague nearly wiped them out. The Zephyr had created artificial intelligence because their population was declining and they needed workers. Every story had a reason, a need, a crisis. "What about their space program?" she asked. "Surely that had a practical purpose." Finn brought up more files. The initial space race was driven by political competition between 2 human factions. But Commissioner, look at what happened after. They sent robots to other planets just to see what was there. They built a telescope and put it in orbit just to look at distant stars. One human named Elon Musk started a private space company because he said civilization needed a backup planet, but also because he thought Mars looked cool. Cool. It's a human term. It means they liked the idea emotionally. Hal turned back to her workstation and pulled up more human inventions at random. A human named invented super strong fibers while trying to make lighter materials for tires. A human named Wilson accidentally invented a life-saving medical device while building something completely different. A human named Spencer invented the microwave oven because he noticed a chocolate bar melting in his pocket near a radar device and got curious. "They stumble into revolutionary technology," Hal muttered. "They invent world-changing devices by accident. They create because they're bored." "Should I prepare a preliminary report?" Finn asked. Hal thought about what the other commissioners would say. The Tribunal of Technological Development was a serious body. They published academic papers. They advised governments. They predicted which species would achieve what milestones and when. If she told them that humans invented most of their technology because they had nothing better to do, they would think she had gone mad. "No," she said slowly. "Not yet. I need to understand this better. Request permission to visit Earth directly. I want to observe them in person." "The humans have only been part of galactic society for 3 years, Commissioner. Are you sure that's wise?" "Finn, in those 3 years, do you know how many patents humans have filed with the Galactic Registry?" "I know, Commissioner. 12,418. Do you know how many they have filed in the last century?" Finn's skin flushed darker. "They are not a highly innovative species, Commissioner." 312, Finn. In 100 years, your people filed 312 patents. Most of them were minor improvements to existing technology. She pulled up more data. The who are considered one of the most advanced species in the galaxy have filed 8,000 patents in the last 500 years. The humans did more in 3 years than we did in 5 centuries. The room fell silent, except for the soft hum of the data processors. "There's something else," Finn said quietly. "I didn't include it in the official data because I thought it might be an error." "Show me." Finn pulled up a file marked Recreation and Hobby Patents. The number next to it made Hal's eyes widen. 68% of human patents are filed by individuals who list their occupation as something other than inventor or researcher. Teachers, doctors, artists, retired people. They invent things as a hobby. "A hobby," Hal repeated. "They revolutionize technology as a hobby." There are entire human communities dedicated to what they call maker culture. They gather in buildings called hackerspaces and just create things for fun. They share their inventions freely. They don't expect payment or recognition. They do it because they enjoy the process. Hal sat down again, her legs suddenly feeling weak despite her species' robust physiology. She had devoted her entire career to understanding how civilizations develop technology. She had written papers on innovation theory. She had advised governments on research funding. And now she was looking at a species that threw all of her theories out the window. "Approve my travel to Earth," she said firmly. "I'm going to solve this puzzle if it takes me the rest of my career." "What should I tell the other commissioners?" "Tell them I'm conducting field research on human innovation patterns. Don't mention the boredom thing. Not yet." After Finn left, Hal sat alone in her office, looking at the human timeline again. She noticed something she had missed before. Many of the greatest human inventions came during periods of peace and prosperity, not crisis. When they had food, shelter, and safety, they didn't rest. They created. They built. They invented. What kind of species couldn't sit still, even when everything was fine? She thought about her own people. When they had achieved a comfortable level of technology, they had been content. They maintained what they had. They made small improvements over centuries. The idea of revolutionary change made them nervous. But humans seemed to get nervous when things stayed the same for too long. Hal pulled up one more file, marked Current Human Projects. She wanted to see what they were working on now, during peacetime, now that they had joined galactic society and had access to advanced technology. The list was 3,000 pages long. She closed the file and rubbed her optical sensors. This was going to be a very interesting research project. Part 2. 3 months later, Hal stood in what humans called a garage in a suburban neighborhood outside Seattle. The garage belonged to a 16-year-old human named Emma, and it currently contained what appeared to be a functional fusion reactor made from parts ordered on something called the Internet. "So you're telling me," Hal said carefully, "that you built this because you were bored during your summer vacation?" Emma looked up from her workbench, where she was soldering something Hal couldn't identify. "Yeah, I mean, All my friends went to camp or got jobs, but that seemed boring. I saw a video about fusion energy and thought it was cool, so I figured I'd try to make one. You figured you'd try to make a fusion reactor. Right. At age 16. Is that weird? I mean, the guy who made the first one was like 14, but he didn't document his process very well, so I had to figure out a lot of stuff on my own. Emma pointed to a notebook filled with calculations. The hardest part was getting the magnetic containment stable. Took me like 3 weeks. Hal looked at her assistant, Finn, who was desperately taking notes on a portable data pad. His 4 eyes were spinning in different directions, another sign of distress. Emma, Hal said gently, do you understand that the Galactic Science Commission has spent 50 years trying to develop stable fusion reactors for civilian use? Oh yeah. Did you try using a modified tokamak design with asymmetric field geometry? Because that's what finally worked for me. Finn made a strangled sound. Commissioner, she just described our current research direction, the one we haven't published yet. Emma shrugged. I mean, it seemed obvious once you work through the math. Do you guys want my notes? I posted them online, but I could make a cleaner version. After they left Emma's garage, Hal sat in the human vehicle that had been provided for her research trip. She had insisted on renting something called an SUV so she could fit her larger frame inside. The vehicle drove itself, which was convenient because she was too stunned to focus on navigation. Next stop, Finn asked weakly. The retirement community in Florida, the one with the engineer. The engineer's name was Harold, and he was 78 years old. He had worked for 40 years before retiring. Now he lived in a pleasant community near the ocean and spent his mornings playing something called pickleball and his afternoons in his workshop. My kids keep telling me I should relax, Harold said, showing them his latest project. But I tried that for about 2 weeks and almost went crazy, so I started tinkering again. His latest tinkering was a new propulsion system that used quantum field manipulation to achieve faster-than-light travel. The prototype was sitting on his workbench next to a half-finished model airplane and a photo of his. This is just a hobby, Hal asked. Well, sure. I mean, it's interesting. The math is fun. I'm probably not going to actually build a full-scale version, but it's nice to prove the concept works. Harold picked up the prototype and turned it over in his hands. I showed it to some folks at the community center. My buddy Dave thinks I should patent it, but that seems like a lot of paperwork. Finn was making that strangled sound again. Commissioner, this design is more efficient than anything currently in use. If the humans implement this, they could cross the galaxy in a fraction of the time it takes our fastest ships. Yeah, the energy efficiency is pretty good, Harold agreed cheerfully. Want some lemonade? My wife just made a pitcher. They sat on Harold's porch, drinking lemonade, while he explained his design process. He had started with basic principles, worked through the math during his morning coffee, and built the prototype in about 6 weeks. He treated it like someone from Hal's world might treat a puzzle game. Can I ask you something? Hal said. Don't you want recognition for this, fame, wealth? Harold laughed. I'm retired, I have enough money. My kids are grown. What would I do with fame? He gestured to his workshop. I do this because it's fun, because I like solving problems, because when I wake up in the morning, I want to know what's going to happen in my brain that day. Over the next month, Hal visited dozens of humans. She went to hackerspaces where groups of people gathered to build robots and write software and design new materials. She visited universities where students created revolutionary technology as part of their homework assignments. She attended something called a science fair, where children presented projects that would qualify as advanced research on most other worlds. Everywhere she went, she asked the same question: why do you do this? The answers varied, but they all had the same core meaning. Because it's interesting. Because I wondered if I could. Because I was bored. Because I wanted to see what would happen. She interviewed a woman who had revolutionized battery technology while on maternity leave. I was nursing the baby at 3 in the morning and thinking about chemistry, the woman explained. I couldn't sleep anyway, so I started working through some ideas. She talked to a man who had solved a centuries-old mathematical problem while recovering from surgery. I couldn't move around much, and TV was boring, so I thought I'd poke at that proof everyone said was impossible. She met a group of teenagers who had created a new form of artificial intelligence that was more efficient than anything the galactic community used. They had done it to win a competition at their school. Finn compiled all the data and created charts and graphs. The pattern was undeniable. Humans innovated at a rate that was exponentially higher than any other known species. But what really stood out was the motivation column, where other species had entries like survival necessity or economic pressure or military advantage. The human column was filled with entries like curiosity, personal interest, and most commonly, nothing better to do. "We need to present this to the Commission," Finn said one evening as they reviewed their findings. "This is the most significant discovery in the history of comparative civilization studies." Hal nodded slowly. She was thinking about something one of the humans had told her, a teacher named Rachel who ran an after-school robotics program. Rachel had said something that stuck in Hal's mind. "Humans are really bad at doing nothing. We get restless. We need to create. It's like we have this engine in our brains that never turns off." An engine that never turns off. "Schedule a presentation for next month," Hal said. "Full commission attendance. This is going to change everything we understand about technological development." "Do you think they'll believe us?" Hal looked at the data one more time. Thousands of inventions, millions of patents, all driven not by need but by what humans called boredom. "They won't have a choice," she said. Part 3. The presentation chamber of the Galactic Science Commission was designed to be impressive. The circular room could seat representatives from 200 different species, each in specially designed seating that accommodated their unique physiologies. Holographic displays floated in the center, visible from every angle. The acoustics were perfect, allowing every being present to hear clearly regardless of their auditory system. Hal had presented here dozens of times before. She had never been nervous. Today, her chromatophores kept shifting colors despite her best efforts to control them. "Distinguished commissioners," she began, "I have spent the last 6 months studying human innovation patterns. What I have discovered challenges every theoretical framework we have developed for understanding technological advancement." She pulled up the first display, showing the standard innovation curve that every known species followed. "This is what we expect to see. Crisis creates need. Need drives innovation. Innovation leads to stability. Stability slows innovation until the next crisis. It's a predictable pattern we've observed across all civilizations." The chamber murmured with agreement. This was basic stuff, taught to every first-year student in the Commission's academies. "Now observe the human curve." She replaced the display with human data. The murmurs stopped. The curve didn't follow the pattern at all. It was exponential, aggressive, unrelenting. It looked less like a civilization's development and more like a runaway reaction. "There must be an error," said Commissioner. "A massive whose species had achieved space travel through necessity after their planet's atmosphere began to collapse. No species innovates at this rate without extreme pressure." "That was my initial conclusion," Hal agreed. "So I investigated their history. I looked for the crises that drove their development." She pulled up more displays. "What I found was surprising. Yes, humans have had wars and disasters, but their greatest period of innovation has occurred during their most peaceful and prosperous era. The last 100 years, when they had sufficient food, medicine, and safety, their rate of innovation increased rather than decreased." "That's impossible," said Commissioner. "A zephyr whose species had nearly gone extinct before developing advanced technology. Comfort breeds complacency. This is a known law of civilization development. I thought so too, Hal said. She gestured and new data appeared. These are interviews I conducted with human inventors. I asked each of them why they created their inventions. Listened to their responses. The chamber filled with human voices. I was bored and wanted to try something new. I wondered if it was possible. I had free time on the weekend. It seemed fun. I couldn't sleep and needed something to occupy my mind. The commissioners shifted uncomfortably. These weren't the motivations of desperate species clinging to survival. These were the motivations of beings who created because they couldn't stop themselves. I present to you 3 case studies, Hal continued. First, a 16-year-old human named Emma who built a working fusion reactor during her summer vacation because, and I quote, she was bored. The holographic display showed Emma's design. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several commissioners immediately started taking notes. That design, Commissioner said slowly, is more advanced than our current prototypes. Indeed. Second case study. Harold, a retired human engineer who developed a faster-than-light propulsion system as a hobby project. He has no intention of patenting it or seeking recognition. He did it because he enjoys solving problems. More gasps, more note-taking. Hal could see she had their full attention now. Third case study. A human artist named Daniel. He was working on a sculpture for a gallery exhibition. He wanted a specific visual effect, so he experimented with light-reactive polymers. In the process, he accidentally solved a quantum computing problem that has stalled our research for 3 generations. He didn't know it was a significant problem. He was trying to make his sculpture look cool. The chamber erupted in discussion. Commissioners were arguing with each other, pulling up their own data, questioning Hal's findings. Order, the voice of High Commissioner cut through the chaos. The ancient being had overseen the commission for 400 years. They had seen civilizations rise and fall. Their judgment was rarely questioned. Commissioner Hal, what is your conclusion? Hal took a breath. This was the moment. High Commissioner, esteemed colleagues, I believe we have discovered a new evolutionary strategy. Every species we have studied innovates through necessity. Crisis drives change. But humans possess a psychological trait that makes them unable to remain idle. They call it boredom, but it's more than that. It's a fundamental restlessness, an inability to be satisfied with the status. They don't need a crisis to innovate. They innovate because not innovating causes them psychological discomfort. She pulled up her final display, a comprehensive analysis of human psychology. Their brains are wired to seek novelty, to solve problems, to create. When they have nothing to do, they become anxious. So they do something, anything. They build, they experiment, they imagine possibilities and then make them real. This trait exists across their entire population, not just among their designated researchers and inventors. That sounds exhausting, Commissioner murmured. To us, yes, but to humans, sitting still is exhausting. Creating is how they rest. Hal looked around the chamber. I submit that we are not dealing with an unusually advanced civilization. We are dealing with a species whose evolutionary psychology treats innovation as a baseline activity rather than a special response to crisis. What are the implications? High Commissioner asked. Profound. In the 3 years since humans joined Galactic Society, they have filed more patents than the next 10 most innovative species combined. They share their technology freely. They don't guard their innovations jealously. They post them on their global network for anyone to access and improve, and they're just getting started. Hal pulled up projections based on current trends. If their rate of innovation continues at its current pace, within a century, they will have technology that surpasses anything in the galaxy. Within 5 centuries, they will have advanced so far beyond us that we won't be able to comprehend their achievements. And they will do all of this not through careful planning or massive research programs, but because Individual humans scattered across their worlds will be bored on Tuesday afternoons and decide to invent something revolutionary. The chamber fell silent. Every commissioner was staring at the projections. "Surely they will slow down," Commissioner said. "Once they achieve sufficient comfort, once they have solved their major problems, they will stabilize like every other species." "Commissioner," Hal said gently, "they already have sufficient comfort by our standards. They have food, shelter, medicine, entertainment. They live longer and healthier lives than most of our species, and their innovation rate is increasing, not decreasing. I don't think they can slow down. I think it's against their nature." High Commissioner was silent for a long moment. Then they spoke, their voice carrying the weight of their centuries of experience. "What you are describing is not just a civilization. It is a force of nature, an evolutionary strategy so aggressive that it borders on cosmic horror." "I wouldn't phrase it quite that dramatically," Hal said. "No," I pulled up the human innovation curve again. "Every species achieves balance. Every civilization finds equilibrium. That is the natural order. What you are showing me is a species that will never find equilibrium because equilibrium is psychologically painful for them. They are an innovation engine that cannot be turned off." Hal had no response to that, because I was right. "I move that we upgrade humanity's classification immediately," Commissioner said. "They need to be designated as a category 1 ascending civilization. That classification is for species that pose potential threats to galactic stability," objected. "And does this not qualify?" Gestured to the data. "In 1,000 years, where will the humans be? In 10,000, they will not stay still. They cannot stay still. They will spread through the galaxy, innovating and creating and building until they have transformed everything around them." The vote was called. The classification was approved unanimously. After the session ended, Finn found Hal standing at one of the observation windows, looking out at the stars. "You did well, Commissioner," Finn said. "Your research will be remembered." "I'm not worried about being remembered," Hal said quietly. "I'm thinking about the future." "The future?" "The Commission will continue to study humans. We will observe them. We will try to understand them. But Finn, I don't think we will ever catch up to them." She pointed to the stars. "Somewhere out there, on a planet called Earth, a human is bored right now. Maybe they are sitting in their garage or their kitchen or their workshop. Maybe they are supposed to be doing something else, but they can't focus because their mind is wandering. And in that moment of boredom, they are probably inventing something that will change the galaxy." Finn was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Is that so bad? Maybe we could learn from them. Maybe if we understood their psychology, we could become more innovative too." Hal turned to look at her assistant. "You're young, Finn. You haven't spent 200 years watching civilizations develop at a predictable pace. You haven't internalized the rhythms of technological progress. But I have. And what the humans are doing breaks every rhythm I understand." She looked back at the stars. "But you're right about one thing, this isn't bad. It's just different, and perhaps the galaxy needs different. Perhaps we have been too comfortable for too long." Far away, on Earth, in a suburban garage, a 17-year-old human named was supposed to be studying for his history exam. Instead, he was thinking about quantum entanglement and whether it could be used for instant communication across vast distances. It seemed like it should work in theory. He pulled out his laptop and started running simulations. He had nothing better to do on a Sunday afternoon anyway.